Welcome to Talking Tech Journeys, hosted by me, Ben Whiteley of BPM Tech. We're delighted to bring you season 1 of Talking Tech Journeys. The aim is clear, to bring you some of the most engaging and respected figures within tech and transformation, providing a snapshot of their journeys to share knowledge, ideas and insights on all things tech and transformation. Sit back, relax and enjoy the journey. Hi, welcome to Talking Tech Journey Season 1. I am Ben Whiteley and delighted to be joined by Dr. Tim Ringrose, CEO of Cognitant Group, an award-winning patient engagement specialist on a mission to empower people with clear, reliable health information, allowing patients to better manage their health and healthcare professionals to deliver the best care. Really looking forward to this. Thanks for joining, Tim.
It's a pleasure, Ben. Yeah, good to be here.
Good. So we'll jump straight in and take you back. Because I know I've read that you've got a passion for taking things apart, and you believe humans are probably the most challenging machine of all. So sort of starts well, really. And how, why, and when did you sort of first become interested in health and technology?
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to when I was a teenager, I did enjoy taking lots of things apart. I used to take my dad's car apart and all sorts of bits and bobs. And I remember when he got a word processor, I guess it was the 80s, wasn't it? And it was a massive machine then. And I honestly thought I was going to do engineering when I was thinking about what I was going to do as a career. But I had a kind of a bit of a last minute change, and I decided that I wanted to do medicine, and that was a really great decision, and I've never regretted it. But yeah, I guess I've approached healthcare from an engineering perspective, and I really enjoyed the training. I think it's such a privilege really to be able to go to medical school and understand all about physiology and the body and pathology. And I also really enjoyed working as a doctor. But I suppose I always wanted to see what was the intersection between engineering and healthcare. And I guess that's kind of dictated what happened after that.
Yeah, which is obviously going to be interested to sort of explore further, like say the engineering, health, sort of technology landscape, and how that sort of interlinks and influences to where you are today. So just in terms of sort of your first job, then, I mean, what were you sort of doing, and how did this sort of shape you, set the foundations, and set you on your journey, Tim?
Well, when you graduate from med school, you're still very young and learning things, and so I did a surgical rotation, and I actually thought I was going to do surgery because I thought that kind of appealed to my sense of engineering. So I was quite set on the idea of doing surgery of some sort, and I had a really interesting house job working in Cardiff, actually, with the surgical team, and we looked after quite a few cancer patients, and it was quite shocking because we had some really quite young patients with metastatic disease. So they had cancer that had really spread quite extensively, and the surgery was not curing them. It was just sort of taking out the worst of the disease and hopefully giving them a bit more life and quality of life.
Yeah.
But I actually found the appeal of medicine was quite strong, and so I decided to go into medicine and into renal medicine, kidney medicine, and I guess part of that was that there was a lot of machinery involved in renal medicine, so dialysis machines and that sort of stuff. But I also found it quite an interesting specialty because the kidneys are very underappreciated. Everyone knows about what your heart does and what your brain does and what your liver does.
True.
But we kind of don't really put a lot of attention on the function of the kidneys. But actually, they perform a lot more than just filtering out your blood and producing urine. And so they're a very complicated, interesting organ. And so that was what I decided to do. But in answer to your question, I really enjoyed so being a doctor, and it was a fascinating experience, and I've got some memories that I'll never forget. Some of the patients I looked after, but the overall feeling in the 90s that I came across was that a lot of the time in medicine, you're not really making an intervention that cures a patient. You're often just trying to support patients with a disease that you can't get rid of, and you're just trying to support them and reduce the impact. And if you think about cancer care, that was certainly the case then. If someone had a diagnosis of breast cancer or malignant melanoma, it was pretty much death sentence. But the things have changed so much since then, and we kind of sometimes don't really appreciate the dramatic steps that have taken place in the last 2-3 decades in science, and in particular things like gene therapy, sequencing the genome and then understanding how genetics cause disease and what we can do to influence that, and how we can use gene switching and other sort of molecular techniques to essentially cure diseases that we just didn't think we could cure before.
Yeah. So in terms of obviously interesting sort of background, I mean, there's been a lot of developments that you've sort of touched on. What would you sort of say in terms of the importance of technology that's played a part in that sort of the first journey, your first role and journey, and helping with some of the developments and things that we sort of see today?
Yeah, I think medicine has become much more scientific. Medicine's always been a bit of an art and a science, and the art part of it is still very important, because fundamentally you're dealing with people, and it's important to consider the whole person, and we do appreciate mental health and all those sorts of things, but the science has really come to the fore, and I think if you're in healthcare at the moment, there are so many opportunities to get involved in technology and science.
Sure.
And it used to be regarded as a bit of an unusual thing to train in medicine and then get involved in technology, but now it's definitely there are a number of options in that field. So I think it's changed a lot.
Why do you think that is? And I suppose the follow-up question is what advice would you give sort of people setting out and sort of experience and journey that you did, interested in a career in sort of digital health and tech?
Well, I think that people are much more open-minded about careers in general, not just in medicine. The old way of you did your time in training and you just worked your way up the system has slightly gone, and that people are much more expecting to do different things and move from one thing to another, and that the same thing's happened in healthcare. And you see a lot of doctors who are thinking, well, I like clinical medicine, but I want to do some things on the side. I spoke to a doctor today actually who works in industry, and he's wants to get going with a startup in his spare time. So I think that's become very normal, and I think the barriers to entry for starting something in technology, starting a company, have reduced so much. It's much more accessible for people. It doesn't necessarily mean that the success rates have got better, so it's still a tough,
very true.
tough thing to do. But I think the opportunities to have a go, something are there, and I think people are just prepared to give it a go. A lot of people know that they might not succeed, but they'll see if they can make it happen.
Yeah. No, which we'll come on to, because obviously I know you've set up Cognitant in the past sort of 7-8 years. So it'd be good to sort of hear that side of the journey. So just in terms of sort of your time in the NHS, I mean, was there a pivotal point? Why did you sort of suddenly decide to step away from the NHS?
Well, it was a bit of a moment where for quite a while I was thinking I just want to move as quickly as I can up the ladder and become a consultant as quickly as possible. But a friend of mine started a company, and so I had the opportunity to join him, and that helped me to take stock, and I realized that there was no rush, and that I had nothing to lose by having a little trip into another world and see what that was like. And I expected that would only be for a couple of years, and then I'd come back to clinical medicine. But I got sucked in, and so I stayed with Dr. AK for, the 10 years. And so that was a fascinating time.
Yeah, so the .com bubble, like you say, taking you back to sort of 1998, startup, doctors.net. So you mentioned, I think from speaking before, your friend Dr. Neil Bacon. I mean, for those people that don't know, a lot of people will, but in a nutshell, who are doctors.net, and it'd be good just a bit of an insight from that perspective.
Well, it's still very much alive and doing well. It's a professional network for doctors. It was set up in 1998, like you said, and I joined, I think, in 2000. So it was kind of just over a year and a half old. And it was a very simple proposition. It was, the internet's here. How can we make best use of it for the medical profession? How can we provide services that are going to help doctors to do a better job and to be able to keep up to date with what's happening and to be able to communicate and share knowledge and experiences. So we provided every doctor in the UK with a free email address and a website where they could use a chat forum, which we're all very used to these days, but in those days it was very, very novel. And we provided them with access to online textbooks and education modules. And we used to have deals for them. So we had a deal with online bookshops and things like that, so that they could buy stuff. And what doctors really liked about it was that it was a club, basically an online club, and it provided them with value, and they could share problems, and so it really took off really well.
Good. Yeah. So I mean, back in sort of 2000 when you joined, I mean, like you said, that the online environment was probably very different to where we are today. So what sort of challenges did you sort of have to overcome in the early days?
Well, the whole internet was relatively young. So, looking back, things were pretty basic. Our website was pretty basic. We worked with a few different platforms, and some of them were very slow and clunky. We had, we were almost a victim of our success. So we used to have problems with the server going down and with the email service packing up. So it felt a little bit where we were just kind of stringing things together and taping things up to keep the thing going.
Yeah. So obviously, then you mentioned previously from research that it was a sort of a free resource, and obviously, that the journey ended when it was acquired by M3 some 10 years down the line. So a couple of things to pick from that. I mean, how did you sort of scale and monetize, doctors.net?
Yeah, well, monetizing was a thing that took us quite a while. The great thing was that we had this very popular service, so we had hundreds of thousands of doctors using it, and a lot of them were using it on a daily basis. So we had the attention of doctors. We did think about introducing a subscription model, but we were reluctant to do that, and we knew that doctors on the whole would prefer if we were able to keep it for free.
Sure.
So what we did was we developed a service where we worked with industry partners, and because we were able to collect quite detailed profile of members, we could, for instance, send doctors surveys. So we could do a survey for a company if they wanted to have 100 GPs or 100 anaesthetists or 100 cardiologists to get their opinion on things. And then we also used to be able to doctors were quite happy to look at information from pharmaceutical companies.
Sure. Okay.
We introduced a service. So instead of the pharma companies sending reps to go and sit in doctors' waiting rooms and wait to have a chance to have a 5-minute chat with them, that we would send them information electronically, so that if you're a cardiologist, you would be sent some information about, say, a new drug that was coming onto the market, or new formulation or whatever. So that worked really well, because of course doctors are happy to look at information that's relevant to them, and they're always happy to give their opinion. and that provided with a revenue stream that was able, we were able to make it work and become profitable, and that's pretty much how it continues today.
So, I mean, how did this sort of acquisition sort of come about, and what was your experience and involvement with that?
Well, we were, as you say, about 10 years old, and we had some very patient investors, but they were kind of like, it's time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we engaged a corporate finance firm who were really good, and they helped us prepare for sale. So, we got to the position of being profitable, and fortunately we were able to get interest from quite a number of interested parties. And so in a relatively short space of time, over a few months, we were able to get to a point where we had a sale complete. And I actually stayed on. So when M3 bought the company, I stayed on.
Yeah.
And I became the CEO for the European region. So it worked out really well. It was a good experience. The investors had a good return on their investment. And it's great that the company's continued. So it's now 25 years old.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? So I know you stayed on 5 years sort of post acquisition. I mean, was that always the plan? And I suppose what changed in terms of the environment and landscape after the acquisition?
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting to stay very long, but it was very interesting because I was then able to get involved in M3's acquisition of other companies across Europe. So we acquired some companies in the UK, in France, in Germany, and so that was really interesting. The company's a Japanese company, so it was, I learned a little bit about what was happening in Japan, and they also have got a big US operation. So it wasn't something I was expecting to do, but I sort of found myself in a fairly large global company with headquarters in Japan. So it was great. It was good for years, but I kind of decided in about 2017 that it was time to do something different, and I wanted to really focus on a new challenge, and that was really how can we empower people to manage their own health more effectively.
Yeah, I suppose the birth of the next chapter of Cognitant Group. So I mean, so you mentioned you sort of finished up 2017, and Cognitant was sort of founded 2018. So was that sort of a concerted sort of time frame? Was it all planned, and how did it sort of come about?
Well, yeah, I think I knew roughly what I wanted to do, but I found I needed to get some headspace to really focus on it. So, I left at the end of 2017 and thought I'd take a bit of time off, but actually I didn't take much time off at all. And so by April, we'd found I'd set up the new company, and I spent those kind of 3 to 4 months just precipitating and formalizing the plans, and a couple of people I knew very well joined me, and so we got going, and 6 years on, we've been cracking on with it.
So I mean, just for the listeners, I mean, who are you, and sort of what services do you provide?
Well, our mission is to empower people with personalized, accessible information about their health, and to provide them with digital tools to help them manage their health. So it's all about giving people the confidence and the information and knowledge to understand about their health and to know what they can do to make the best of it. We all know that the health service is overburdened, but we also know that there's a lot of avoidable and unnecessary disease, and often people, if you wait till you have symptoms, it's often quite late in the day. So how can you manage your risk of developing a condition, and take steps to avoid developing it in the first place, which isn't always possible. But if you do have a long-term condition, what can you do to ensure that you don't suffer unnecessary complications or get progression of your disease that mean that you're going to end up having quite a negative effect on your your health.
Yeah.
Because one of the striking things is that over the last century, people's lifespan has increased hugely. Average life expectancy has gone up by 20 years. But unfortunately, people's healthy lifespan, i.e. the amount of time you spend in good health, is actually not increasing, it's actually reducing, because of diseases like diabetes and cardiovascular disease and some degree cancer. So we need to look at healthy lifespan rather than just lifespan in total, and make sure that we're really doing everything we can to reduce the impact of long-term conditions, because that is the big challenge for our society in this day and age. We've been very good at curing infectious diseases. Pandemics still come along, as we know, but the biggest challenges to us are really things like long-term conditions. Cardiovascular disease is still the biggest killer and has the biggest impact on people's health.
So I mean, how's technology and obviously Cognitant supporting sort of strategies for such conditions?
Well, I mean, I think there are some really simple things we can do, and I'm a great believer that if you can be provided with information and understand your health, you're in a much better position to manage it more effectively. I'm ashamed to say that when I was at medical school, we weren't taught much about the impact of diet or exercise on health.
Wow.
But actually, those are two of the most important things that you can do to avoid ill health. So, education is a really important part of our proposition, but it's also around knowing what it is you can do. And, the old adage was, you just wait until you feel ill and then you go and see a doctor. But as I said before, that's often too late in the day. So a really good example of that is, we should all know what our blood pressure is, because, having high blood pressure is quite common, and it leads to massively increased risk of a number of conditions like stroke and heart attack, and it has a negative impact on your kidney function. So, we know that there are quite a lot of people wandering around who've got no idea they've got high blood pressure. So if people can be educated about it and know that that they need to get that checked, and that they know what they can do if they have got high blood pressure, I think we can have a really good impact. So it's a combination of education and tools to help people know what they can do to manage their own health.
Yeah, good. And in terms of, I've read about some of the partnerships, collaborations that you've worked with various businesses, partners, NHS, pharma organisations. Are there any that you're particularly proud of, and some of the, the outcomes that you could share with us?
Yeah, well, one of our first programs has been for patients with chronic kidney disease. We developed that program with the Royal Berkshire Hospital, NHS Hospital, and that's now being used by a number of different hospitals across the UK and into Wales. And what we can already see is that patients find it really useful. It helps them to understand what the diagnosis means, and more importantly, it helps them to know what they can do about it. And so that's a really good example of a program that's spreading across the UK and having a big impact. And I'm really excited that we're about to start developing a program for people with high blood pressure. Again, we're developing it with an NHS organisation, and what we're trying to do here is to build programs that we can build with one organisation in the NHS and then scale it. As you mentioned, we also work with industry, so I think that's really important that we work together with pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, and the NHS, and in other markets with providers and insurers there, to come up with solutions that are going to meet the needs of patients. Because I think everybody knows that we need to focus on the needs of the patient, and if we all do that together, I think we can have a much bigger impact.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100% agree. And no doubt those partnerships with sort of the NHS and pharma organisations are very different. Have you sort of any advice for people sort of looking at exploring those avenues personally?
I think it's often quite hard to get started. I think it's very important to be very clear about what it is you're trying to do and not try to cover too much. So it's often a good idea to pick one area that you really want to focus on. And I think people are very receptive to new ideas and to talking. But you've got to somehow then transform those nice conversations into something tangible. We're very lucky in the UK that we have got good tax incentives for investors. So we've got SEIS and EIS schemes, which really help startups to get going and encourage investors to put some money in. And we're also very lucky in that we've got fairly good grant pool. So Innovate UK, SBRI, and others are very helpful to startups because they'll often support something at quite an early stage. And if investors see that Innovate UK are helping to fund something, we got some Innovate UK funding quite early, that really gives them confidence that this is something that they can have confidence in. And there are also lots of accelerators and organizations. The NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Programme is fantastic. I think they've had more than 1,000 clinicians through that. We're part of the National Innovation Accelerator Programme. So all these things are great. And what I would definitely say to anyone who's thinking about starting a career in healthcare as an entrepreneur is there are loads of people out there willing to support you and share advice and help you. So go and talk to people.
Great point. I know I was going to come on to the 2024 cohort for the NIA. I mean, obviously relatively early days, but how are you finding the experience?
Yeah, really good. There are 12 companies in it, and the point of the NIA is to pick companies that are ready to scale across the NHS. So it's great that we've been picked, and it just helps you to get noticed. It helps you to raise your profile and to be seen as a company that's been handpicked as one that's ready to scale. So it's been really helpful.
Brilliant. I mean, just lastly, I mean, what does a sort of future hold in terms of Cognitant and the products and services that you guys are looking at exploring in the near future?
Well, we've been developing our Healthy Note platform, which, as I talked about, has been used for a number of programs. And I think we're working across 17 different hospitals at the moment and quite a large number of GP practices. What I'm interested in doing is seeing how we can really take that right across the NHS, across as many long-term conditions as possible. And, and from a technology point of view, artificial intelligence is bringing so many new opportunities. Every single company is working out how they can make best use of it, and there's certainly opportunities for us in terms of the production of really personalized interactive content that's going to help people understand their health, and also in the personalization. So one of the things that we're doing is developing integrations with electronic health records so that we can, with your permission, look at your record and work out what information and services are going to be most useful for you.
Right. Which is, obviously very beneficial in terms of quality of patient care and freeing up time and money ultimately.
Yeah, so we like to call it Health Companions. It's a service that is kind of like it's looking after you, looking out for you and saying, hey, you maybe your cholesterol is a bit high. This is what you need to know about your cholesterol. This is what you need to know about how you can manage that.
Brilliant. Good. Well, look, Tim, many thanks for your time and great talking today. Lots of great insights and all the best with the NIA program and in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. It's been great talking. Thanks.
Good stuff. Just lastly, to the listeners, it'd be good to hear your views and opinions on the role technology has played in patient empowerment to long-term conditions. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed Talking Tech Journeys, and we'll catch you next time. Good company and colleagues in a career make the journey more rewarding. If you did enjoy, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favourite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to follow and join the Talking Tech Journeys, the podcast group on LinkedIn, where you can join in debate and message us directly if you'd like to be considered as a guest, have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions. You can also email ben.whiteley@bpmtech.co.uk. Until next time, enjoy your journey.